Excuse me. Hello, welcome to Star Wars Spelt Out. I'm your host, Josh Chapman, and today it's like a school's out for summer day. It's like I'm at home and it's the middle of the day here in Melbourne, and there's no children in the house. There's no partner in the house. It's just me in the house, which is very, very strange. So I thought I would make the most of having someone I know who is currently on holiday as well. Our good buddy from That Geek Pod, Catherine Kneen. How you going, Catherine?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm a little bit freaked out. My house is quiet. There doesn't seem to be mess generating when I leave the room. Like normally, I'll clear something up and then I'll come back and then there's more mess, and then you clear it up and there's more mess. It's just weird. It's just like as I left it, it's very freaky.
Yeah, welcome to my life. It's quite annoying. Someone doesn't come in and empty the dishwasher for me. It's quite annoying.
Small price to pay for having to continually clean the same food off the floor in the same spot over and over. My whole life. Anybody wants to ask you what it's like being a parent, it's basically cleaning food off the floor over and over and over again. That's all it is. But
sounds so glamorous.
Oh yeah, it's so glamorous. So I'm just looking at you at the background. We're doing this over the Skype here, and it's looking very neat and tidy here. And I just have to touch before we go any further. There is a gigantic R2-D2 drink bottle sitting behind your head there. I can see it.
Yeah.
That you forked out for it at opening night for Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Did not expect it to be that big. It is enormous.
Have you filled it up at home?
No. I figured it would be difficult to clean out again and dry properly, and word on the street is, yes, it is. It's very difficult to clean.
Well, there you go. It'd be easy to empty the dishwasher if you've just got one R2-D2 to take out of the dishwasher.
It wouldn't fit. You'd have to take out all the racks.
Yeah, you'd have to pull his head off probably. And
I'm not doing that. Yeah.
There's a lot of labour involved. Now, we're doing a little bit different here today. So That Geek Pod is back in full effect, like Public Enemy from 2000. PE is in full effect. So Catherine's back getting episodes out. I had a really good one with Charlie Ashbury the other day, which was really good. So what we're doing, a little crossover here. So we're going to do a little review show of 2019. That was the year that was, like they do with the footy ones, the year that was, the season that was. And then what we're going to do is that you're going to jump over onto That Geek Pod and we're going to do a preview show of 2020. So a little bit of reminiscing and a little bit of speculating.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yes.
Before we go any further, though, let's touch base on Rise of Skywalker. Now, I saw it, the first two times I saw Rise of Skywalker was with you, opening night down there at Knox, and then we went down to your hood, down to Southland, and watched it with our buddy Dale, who I think is up to like 5 or 6 now, so he's absolutely made up for lost time.
Yeah, he's seen it a lot. I've seen it one more time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was just going to ask, when did you next see it?
It was after my birthday. It was after Christmas. It was after my birthday. Oh, was it last weekend? I don't know. Time is all very
school holidays.
Ball of
wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Wibbly wobbly, yes. But yes, I've seen it 3 times now, and I have to admit that third time my mind kept wandering. I kept thinking about questions I'd sending to Canto Bight or things to say. So I'm a bit, am I that invested in this movie? If my mind's wandering, is it? It's not really holding my interest, which is a bit of a shame.
Interesting. Yeah, because the third one for me was probably the one I enjoyed the most, because I'd sort of seen it the 2 times before that, and the third time I just sort of sat back and enjoyed the ride, really. And then I saw it for the 4th time on Saturday, just past my best mate. he wanted to go see it again. So I saw it with him the third time. He wanted to see it again, so we went down to the Rivoli, which is the local cinema down here. And sitting next to us, directly next to us, was the Australian Federal Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, who was watching Star Wars with his dad. So people overseas wouldn't know who that is, but obviously he's basically... Effectively, the treasurer is usually the next person who's prime minister in a party if they do a succession. Not always, but a lot of the time it is.
Libs, Bill.
Yeah, so given the way we churn through prime ministers, it could be Prime Minister Josh Frydenberg by the end of the year. Anyway, he was sitting there watching Rise of Skywalker with, I think it must have been his dad. And, well, he didn't text during the movie. He didn't talk during the movie. So I can't really... I'm not a huge fan of his politics, but at the same time, at least he displayed a little bit of cinema etiquette.
Yeah. Bare minimum, right?
Yeah, he did the bare minimum. Yeah. The Rivoli's a pretty classy cinema, so people got to behave there. I enjoyed it the fourth time. I definitely don't... Yeah, it's definitely behind the other two as far as Force Awakens and Last Jedi goes. But there is still quite a lot. I liked it, and it was a good audience. It was still quite busy, actually. There was, we weren't in the big room, but the room we were in was pretty full. So it was a Saturday night, but it's definitely got some legs.
Yeah, and I am thinking of going again, because there are parts that I do enjoy and I want to pick down on more. And I think, like all Star Wars films, you want to focus on the bits you like, and the bits you're not as fond of, you sort of go, oh yeah, okay. But I think with this film, it's sort of interesting that the more into it you pick, or the bigger fan you are, that's a really bad phrase, but the more into the fandom you are, possibly, the sort of more nits you seem to be able to pick at the film, and you see more of the faults, whereas most people are like, yeah, it was really good. So it's kind of strange that
I think
that way.
It's got a lot to do with it being the final one, I think, because there's no way back. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to live with these things now. Like, I guess, we've got to the final ones of other ones before, but I guess in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, there's another one. They'll do something. We'll have something new. But when you're sort of closing something out and going, all right, well, that's that story. That is it. That's the way it's been. You got to kind of go, oh, all right, well, I wouldn't have wanted that to happen, or this or that, or wanted that to kind of go differently. There's, but I'll be curious to see what the deleted scenes are, and hopefully there's a nice making of and stuff as well. And and then we move on to whatever's next. When we'll get to that in the speculation show, we won't delve into that. But let's go back in time, Catherine. I stupidly should have brought up some sort of Star Wars 2019 timeline or something. But what we'll do is we'll just jump around the track, and just talk about the things that have happened this year. I'm just trying to think of the sort of the stuff that was happening towards the start of the year. I mean, do we start with Celebration? Is it worth sort of jumping off on that point?
I'm trying to think.
What happened before then? Did we hit Resistance?
Yeah.
So maybe let's start with Resistance. So we basically got the tail end of the first series of Resistance. I feel like we definitely started it the year before, but we certainly finished up now. Definitely at that point at the start of the year, and I watched them all sort of on a plane going to Celebration, doing my binge on, but it basically got better. The first series got better and better as it went on, really. And it seems that Series 2 is kind of doing the same thing at the moment. I don't know if I don't think you're quite caught up, are you?
No, I got more and more behind, and then it just got to a point I'm like, I'm...
I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah, and you had located copies for myself and others to see. Obviously you flew overseas and got perfectly legitimate copies for us all.
Exactly.
But
if you withhold it from Australians, they find a way.
Yes.
It is season 1 is on Disney Plus now in Australia too. So I have technically paid for it now. I've got it.
Season 1, you're right. The second half did get better and better. I mean, Kaz still has his sort of very, very clumsy moments, but it got better and better. And then there was that great moment with Hux doing the speech.
Yep.
And the Hosnian
The closer
part.
it got to basically when they weaved it into The Force Awakens, the better it got, didn't it? Because you sort of felt the stakes, and it kind of even made, I wouldn't say it made The Force Awakens better, but it did sort of show the impact of that moment, the gravity of it, I suppose, as well. Because it is sort of, it kind of happens in Force Awakens and they move on pretty quick, don't they? They kind of just get on with the story. And even so, like, even throughout the sequel trilogy, it's like, oh, well, I guess those central planets aren't there. It's not really talked about. You know what I mean? Like, the prequels are so centered on those central planets and the government and everything like that it's so brushed aside in these movies. So Resistance does give you a little bit of a flavor of that. I think it was good. I enjoyed Resistance. Like, I quite like it. Some people have less tolerance for it. It is a little bit up and down and stuff, but I'm glad they did it. You know, the more Star Wars, the better. I don't know who else is watching it apart from Star Wars fans. I don't know if kids are into it.
Yeah, I don't have kids that around me that age who are into it, and it's just so hard to get. I mean, even when we had the Disney Channel on Foxtel here, it wasn't showing on there.
No.
It was a really ludicrous situation. They have their own channel and they weren't showing it, and it wasn't like they were hanging on for Disney Plus, because they're not coming onto Disney Plus either. So I don't understand what Disney's doing.
I don't know what they were doing. It was a weird sort of, it almost felt like it was some sort of weird, like, contractual obligation or something like that. Or like they had to, like, you know, it's like they signed on for 4 albums and they had to put out the live album, and, you know, they had to do something to sort of make sure that they had some animation stuff still going and keep people in the job or whatever. And then obviously only committing to 2 series. But I haven't think I've barely seen any Resistance toys or anything in Australia anyway. I don't even know if they made it over. I don't recall.
I wouldn't think so.
Might have to ask the geek dudes. They're the toy experts. They kind of know what we get and what we don't get. But so then basically that wound up, and then we'll stick with Resistance. I'm not going to do a timeline thing here. So then we saw the first episode, the second series of Resistance Celebration, which was cool, and then it's sort of been back since. Now, you haven't been watching all of it.
No.
I've sort of stuck with it, and there's been it started off, second series sort of flew out of the gate, you know, because again it was close to that Last Jedi period. They're kind of on the run. There was a bit of that. And then it kind of got to a point where it felt like they were just sort of treading water. They just were kind of, you know, running into a giant monster every week, or had to find something for the thing every week. And the episodes that kind of brought every sort of third or fourth, they'd check in with Tam at the First Order and stuff. And that was always the sort of fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And now, where they are now, I've just caught up. They've kind of got a spot that it seems like they're parking the Colossus, but then the First Order turn up again. They're on the run again. But it seems like it's inching closer to the Rise of Skywalker. It's quite interesting because the last episode I watched, it's really spoiling for you. Kaz is basically just like, all right, you know what? I think I've got to go join the Resistance. I can't be hanging out here anymore. I've got to take the fight to them. We can't run anymore. And I thought, maybe that's going to lead into, you know, like, I hope Resistance ends with him in that battle at Exegol. Like, I'd like to see that you know, even the Colossus turns up as well somewhere. I mean, that's the perfect way to end it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, them getting the call from Lando or something.
Yeah, bring Lando into it.
Yeah,
so we can get a feel of what happened on that other side, because they just kind of go, Chewie and Lando go off.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, I know we've got to stick with the principles here, but it'd be great if they had a Resistance episode where they get a transmission from Lando Calrissian, you know. It's just like, hey, everybody. It's your old pal Lando. That would be great. And then they all, you know, all the fighters and the the aces and stuff all get together, and the Colossus, and get there and fight the good fight. So that's the best way to end it, I think. I assume, you know, they won't kill off Kaz or anything like that. But and then we sort of we'll kind of see where we go from there, I guess. I guess it'll be a funny little thing, Resistance. It'll be this little kind of thing that existed for a couple of years, and I don't think it's going to have the sort of the bring back the Clone Wars thing as much, is it? I don't think it's been around long enough, and sort of. I mean, it definitely has its fans. We saw that at Celebration, but whether people are crying out for more.
I mean, I can only judge it by our friends, and the friends who watch it. They watch it, but they're not as invested in it.
No. And it's a slight sense of obligation almost, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things of why I got so behind on it, is that it felt like homework.
Yep.
That it wasn't something I was going, oh, yeah, let's chuck on an episode of Resistance. So that's a shame. But again, I think once they said it was only 2 seasons, I sort of didn't feel the need either to keep up. You know, like with these TV shows that go on and on and on, you feel the need to keep up. You have to keep up. Otherwise, it's a huge mountain to climb. Yeah.
Well, the problem it's got, and I mean, the obvious reason why it's ending when it's ending is because it's going to butt up right against the end of the Skywalker saga. So they're effectively at the end of that storytelling, and I think they're very gun shy about going, well, we don't want to tell any more story past then, because we don't want to get into this position where we did with like the expanded universe. We just started telling these stories, and then we've got to basically retcon when we finally figure out what we want to do later on. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just go, you know, when Rey's standing in front of those twin suns and with BB-8 and the you know the lights come up and the movie's over, like that is the end of the story for foreseeable future. We'll go into more detail when we get to Rise of Skywalker, but I think Resistance is basically, it'll butt up to that. You know, if they're smart, I mean, it's hard to say if they're smart. You know, it's hard for an animated show also because it takes time to do it. So they've been a victim of the fast production and turnaround of Rise of Skywalker, where they probably haven't known what's happening as well. They're kind of going, well, we can't end this thing. We can't tie this thing in with where Rise of Skywalker is going because we don't know. Like, they won't tell us, or we know very little.
Yeah,
maybe we know there's a battle.
Only be given some vague details, you would think, to sort of know, well, these are things you can and can't do.
Yeah, like don't talk about what Kylo Ren's up to. Don't talk about even like Hux as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of going, well, we can't even, because they kind of tease General Hux in places like, well, we can't even touch on Hux now because it turns out he's a bloody turncoat, and you know, he's not going to be actively trying to thwart this thing now because,
well, only if thwarting it, you know, he's just anti Kylo Ren. So if thwarting the Colossus base would be a feathering his cap rather than Kylo Ren's, then he'd be all for it.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true, actually. That's a good point. So yeah, Resistance, you know, we hardly knew you. I mean, you're not even done yet, but I'm not quite sure how many. It's got about 16 episodes it's done. It's probably, if they do a 22 episode run, it'll have 5 or 6 more. Hopefully it would be really great if it started working towards that Battle of Exegol stuff, and that's where it was heading. But I have a feeling that maybe that's not going to happen till the very, very end, just because they've got this release schedule. They've just got to try and, you know, put in some wacky hijinks and things like that. So anyway, there you go. Like, obviously, as we go through this, I'm sort of only going to touch on stuff that I've consumed, like books. I'm not down with the books very well. I don't read them. I've had some people on here talk about them. I know a little bit. So if you're clambering here for a bit of book stuff, you're probably not going to hear it, unless, Catherine, you've got stuff that you can interject with.
I've read some of the books. I heard a lot of people talking about Resistance Reborn and raving about it. I sort of read it and went, why are they raving about it? But that's my position on most Star Wars books.
Yep.
I have to admit.
We had Sorry, I was going to say, we had Holly from Rebel Dispatch on. She did her review. So if you want to know what happened on that one, you can check that out.
Yeah. I've recently tried to get back into some comics. So I'm reading The Rise of Kylo Ren, and I'm going Soul run of the Vader comics. I'm currently in the Invasion of was it Mon Calmar?
Oh, yep.
Yeah. So I've sort of asked the Bad Motivated Boys and King Tom, what's some good comics, and they directed me to those ones. And and I'm reading the Kylo Ren ones, and at the end of that run, I'll be planning to get that as the volume.
The trade paperback. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. The I've read most of the comics, and they kind of vary in quality. Nothing's terrible. I think the Vader one was quite good. The Dr. Aphra, I think, is still the best one. She's screaming out for some on-screen, being moved onto the on-screen. I think she's a character that you can do a lot with. I think hopefully they're thinking that one day they'll move her, Disney Plus or something, or animated, or I don't know. She's just a very interesting character, I think. Well, it's funny because they've just moved. They've just finished like the run between Star Wars and Empire. So they've done that now, and now they've just pivoted onto Empire Strikes Back. But it was actually interesting because I was like, oh, okay, how are they going to do this? And the first one that I've read basically takes place between them rescuing Luke from Cloud City. Like Luke is on the Falcon, and then they're flying. They're leaving, but they haven't got to like the medical frigate, so they're on the Falcon. Yeah, so it's a really weird, because it's sort of like, oh, the movie is still happening, So there's this whole thing where they're like, Leia's really suspicious of Lando, and he's just kind of, she's like, we're going to get back to the fleet, and he's like, oh, we can't do this, and and they, and then they get chased down by someone, and Luke basically gets on the gun, like the Millennium Falcon with one hand. So he's like, I've got to help out. And he's like on there with like one hand, and he's like thinking about the Vader stuff, and then he sort of like goes around, and he like shoots all the TIE fighters down, and it's an interesting read, actually. It might even be Charles Soule as well. I think he's like the guy at the moment. He's like the comics guy. Sort of like the Claudia Carver. I was going to say Claudia Carver, the actress. Who was is it Claudia Gray?
Gray.
She's sort of she's sort of like the A1 author. Everyone gets really pumped when she's doing something.
Yeah.
I think Charles Soule's sort of becoming the comics guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of getting from King Tom and Luke Cruiser. They're sort of my go-to comics, asking people.
Defer to the experts.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with King Tom and Cruiser. Always good. So the comics, have been pretty good. I'm not quite sure what's coming in the new year. I think this Empire stuff, obviously we're rolling into 40th anniversary of Empire, but we'll touch on that on the prediction show. So stick with that. Right. Let's talk about Celebration, Catherine.
Yes.
We were just a bunch of plucky, wide-eyed Australians who didn't really know
a bunch of noobs
who didn't know anything, who just had this crazy idea to fly to the other side of the world for a Star Wars convention. And I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say, at least from my point of view, and I think pretty much yours, that it probably went better than we could have possibly imagined, really.
Yeah, everyone we met was awesome. We were incredibly lucky with the panel lottery. Mm-hmm. That's
got it all, man. Got it all, yeah.
And just the whole experience was so much fun that by the end of that 5th day, we're like, right, we're doing this again.
Yeah, it was as soon as they said that it was coming back, it was kind of just like, yep, well, we've got to, and it, obviously it's a commitment. I know that it's funny because there were people when we got to the last day of Celebration, some people started leaving and stuff like that, and they were like, oh, what happened to so and so? Like, oh, they had to go, they've got to work tomorrow. This whole thing of going, oh yeah, most people here just go back to their lives straight away. Like this was like the holiday, like the trip, you know what I mean? Like it was like, no, we've got to get on a plane. We had a few days in San Francisco where we hung out, but it was, it certainly made an impression, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, it was. It was like just amazing meeting all of these people. Twitter come to life, but to be with all your friends and you just immediately get on, and everyone's as awesome as you think they're going to be, and then everyone's just happy.
Yeah,
that was just the
We did have
vibe
we
that
had some
it's
trepidation.
happy.
Like I remember we might have even done a podcast or two leading up to it, and we were a bit just like, oh, hopefully there aren't too many like anti, Last Jedi people or whatever, and if there were people there who had that point of view, they certainly kept it to themselves, or at least amongst the people that they felt that they could express that with. It wasn't really. It was all pretty good vibes, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great vibes. Now I freak out about things that, for the listener, Josh gets bombarded with 50 million questions from me about everything.
Logistics and things.
Yep.
But nothing. It wasn't really. I mean, to your credit, it was really just. It wasn't nothing that was unreasonable, and at the same time, it wasn't. It was always like, let's just double check and make sure, or a situation like, oh, yep, no, I think that'll be okay, or good thinking, we better think of that just in case. It wasn't like, what if the plane goes down or anything like that. It was, they were all just sort of like, well, what time are you getting there? Let's just make sure that we both leave the airport at the same time, and what time are these people getting here? And we did have a bit of a snafu. People who listen to this know that our accommodation got cancelled on us, like a month and a half before it started. And there was a little bit of panic, but it actually was a blessing in disguise because we managed to get a new place right next to where a lot of our friends were. So, it would have been perfectly fine where we'd been, but it worked out great because we could just walk to the house and hang out with all our friends.
Yeah. And that's one thing about the Chicago celebration, was that most people were quite spread out. So we were quite away from the convention center, and other people were in other hotels. It ended up being quite spread out. Whereas I think Anaheim is going to be a bit more confined. So that could be advantageous.
Yeah. So provided our accommodation doesn't get cancelled on us, and I don't think it will. I think we were the victim of somebody with dollar signs in their eyes last time, because we kind of booked right away and they didn't realise Star Wars was in town, and because this one's basically at Disneyland. The place that we booked is purpose built for people who travel to Disney. It's always busy. It's not like they're going to go, just because there's a convention on, it's not going to make any difference. Like it's busy all year. So. And, I want to be in the Disney house. So,
Oh, this Disney house.
Who's going to sleep in the Frozen room? We haven't quite worked that out yet. But you laugh, but it's quite true. But no, so we were very lucky with panels. We were very lucky with accommodation and friends and stuff. And it worked out really well. I found it very well run. I know it was for you and for me to a degree very overwhelming on that first day, that preview day when everyone's on the floor and kind of has nowhere to go, and you're just like... There's a lot going on here. Yeah, there was a lot going on, and the size, the scale, the people, it was just huge. And it took me a few days to even work out, there's a whole other section, other rooms. And it was just, I don't, people tell you how big it is, but it don't quite click. And that preview day, because everyone's sort of in the one space, it is quite an overwhelming day. Yeah. Well, that was the thing. We sort of stuck very close to each other that first day, and then sort of, like you said, by day 2 or 3, it was like Catherine's just like, oh, she's off. Everyone's off doing their own thing. So I mean, this year, when we get there, it'll be a lot more. I think everybody will hit the ground running a lot more, and I think it's one less day this time. There's no preview day this time. Yeah. Everybody will just be like, bang, I'm going to do this, and we'll just have to. I mean, when we get to the prediction show, we'll talk more about that kind of stuff. But no, celebration was awesome. It was the time of our lives. I think it went as well as you could have hoped, really. And it's funny, thinking about sitting in that arena, watching that preview, that ride, and now the movie's out. It's just trying to tie the two together. They still almost feel like separate things, don't they? Yeah, and all our ideas about Rise of Skywalker, I know I was like, Palpatine is just going to be a ghost or just some kind of force presence haunting the Death Star. I did not think he'd be back in physical form. I just thought, he'd be some kind of ghost or haunting. Vision or just almost like a thing people are worried about that motivates them to do certain things. Like, this is the prospect of it. That's the idea. So yeah, I was also very sort of surprised with that. Anything else on Celebration we need to touch on? I feel like if you really want to know our thoughts, you can go back on the other podcast. We're just sort of doing the year, like I said, the Star Wars year in review. It's the more I think about it, I'm like, geez, that was a big year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny now that we're just sort of at the other end of it and just podcasting, and I've struggled at the moment because I've been on holidays and I'm sort of looking after children and stuff now. I'm not at work, which is where I listen to podcasts because I've got the headphones in all day. So I've fallen behind on a lot of podcasts at the moment, but it does seem there's a bit of like, oh, well, what do we do now? Like, where do we go from here? Like, it's hard to have that build up for so long, and then you have this thing, and then you've just got to. It's hard to pick yourself straight up again, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. It was this long build up of building up to Celebration, building up to Mandalorian, building up to Rise of Skywalker, and then, okay, what now? What now?
It's funny because we're sort of spoiled. You don't realize how spoiled you are, really. Like I said, just looking back, going, God, we had this. Like back in my day, you'd lucky get one movie, every 3 years, and that was it. It's that continual machine now that it does sort of feed you, but at the same time, when it slows down for just a second, because pretty much from November, like you said, with Mandalorian, we've just been fed every week. There's just been content, especially with the podcast. It's like we've got all this stuff that we haven't been able to cover everything, So let's move on to Disney Plus. Yeah. How's your relationship with Disney Plus going now post Mandalorian?
Well, I'm currently doing a Clone Wars rewatch. It's a nice, easy thing to sort of chuck on while I'm making dinner or doing something, and to leading to the new season coming. Is it next month?
I think it's like February, mid-February or something. I think.
Yeah. So it's always good going back, and of course I've just watched some Mandalorian episodes, or some episodes on Mandalore. So they have a greater importance now, and it's like, oh, their Death Watch, but they take their helmets off. What's going on?
Are you doing release order or chronological order, or are you just kind of randomly just picking stuff that interests you?
No, chronological. I'm a bit OCD, so I'm doing the chronological, so you're checking the website for the chronological release and then going and getting that episode.
So they're not doing that there's no option for that on Disney Plus though?
No. And, if we want to talk about things that Disney Plus could do to improve,
please.
They could have that option to, have it integrate that chronological order rewatch.
Yep.
Because that's how people will be doing it. And especially where I am now, there's a lot of jumping around and it's a pain.
Yeah. You're like, I got to go scroll back up to here, go back to here. Yep. And especially for something like, I think that's where that's a disadvantage streaming, because like obviously if you've just downloaded them or you got the DVDs, it's probably even slightly easier because it remembers where you are. So it's always trying to start you on the next thing. You're like, no, I've actually got to go back here. Like, I'm here. There's I would like to go back and watch Clone Wars. I just don't have the time to do it. No. I might go back and watch. Maybe I'll go back and watch the last bits of the last series, but I feel like I can pretty much jump straight back in and I should be okay. I watched the Clone Wars when it came out and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't certainly chomping for more Clone Wars. I'm really happy that people who really love it get a bit more. Great. I'll watch it, more content, but Disney Plus is certainly getting a run at our house still because we've got a 4-year-old. So we've been doing Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse, Mickey Mouse's Road Races. We were watching the Disney Christmas stuff. We watched Cinderella 2 the other day. We started getting into the direct-to-video sequels of some of these things, and they're not great, but for a 4-year-old, pretty happy with it. Yeah.
Do you think you'll get rid of any of your other streaming services? Has Disney just taken over, or?
No. Well, we have Netflix. We still get enough out of Netflix, and then Stan, we have my sister's account, but basically useless because anytime we go, oh, that's in Stan, we go log in and she's already watching something on there. I think the other day we wanted to watch something because it was on TV and was on Stan. We tried to do the troll, flick over to not have the ads kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she was watching something. But I would like to watch that True History of the Kelly Gang when that comes out. I think that's a week or two away. But we don't, mostly Netflix and Disney Plus at the moment gets the work out. My Little Pony's on Netflix, so we can't get rid of that either. You can see who control. Actually, to be honest, it sounds like that I'm saying that Olive watches a lot of TV. She doesn't. She'd be lucky to watch an hour when she's home during Sloane's nap or something, and that's it really. But it just adds up. It's good to have.
Yeah,
it's good to have. She doesn't really do many repeats. She always watches something new. So let's go. Let's touch on Mandalorian. When we were sitting in that arena, we saw the footage and stuff. I mean, were you sold then?
Yeah, I think I was sold. I mean, we saw the extended scene and we saw IG-11 moving around and Werner Herzog talking, and it was so awesome. And we saw a bit of behind the scenes how they were building up the special effects and how they were using some practical with building the ships, but then they were adding in a lot of CGI, of course. But it was amazing, and I think I was sold definitely in that big arena. But the first episode, you're like, wow.
It was just that it wasn't cheap. Like
no,
it's a funny logic, isn't it? Because I guess you kind of go, hey, it's Disney, they got cash to burn, it's Star Wars, it's this new streaming thing, and they want to make an impression. But at the back of your head, you're still kind of like, it could still just be cheap, people in a corridor, kind of, like. I was sort of like, oh, maybe it'll be sort of, like Doctor Who level production now, which is pretty good. But at the same time, you kind of go, well, it's still on a budget, the special effects and stuff. Then it's. I was kind of like, maybe it'll kind of be like that, which is perfectly fine for Doctor Who. But I was like, oh, Star Wars. But it just, I found it very hard to differentiate from the quality of the films. I mean, obviously the scale's not as big, but as far as the quality, it was pretty amazing.
And to hear about, how they're filming some of those scenes, like with Werner Herzog, they had part of the practical set, but then they also had surrounded him with these screens and were projecting the set on the screens, and that's how they're doing it. So it's not a green screen as such, but it's more of a lived-in, this is where you are.
Yeah.
It's a really cool idea.
It's quite clever, isn't it? It makes it very flexible because then they can just flick it onto something else. And then basically, we sat in that celebration thing and nobody even, heard of Baby Yoda. Could you? It's just the idea. Like, it wasn't even a thing that was considered. Like, it felt like the show was the show. Like, we saw the show. Even when we got those previews and stuff at Celebration, I was like, okay, I got a pretty good idea what this is. And I think I remember hearing a Steele Wars episode, or it might have been one of those ones where they talk, where I think he'd spoken to making Star Wars guys, and I think he hinted, there was some sort of protagonist, or there was some sort of child involved, or there might have been and I think there was a preview where you see, the episode where he goes to protect the town and the lady's got her daughter and she's sort of hugging the daughter. Yeah. I was like, I thought, maybe that's the child. There's an episode where, maybe that's what it is. I certainly wasn't thinking any Baby Yodas, Catherine.
No, I don't think anyone walking out of that panel at Celebration would have said, there's going to be Baby Yodas. And I think most people would have said, they'll probably not have any Force users at all. That they'll stay away from that completely. And yes, first episode, little Baby Yoda. He's a little poor.
I just before we came on, I was down at a place we know well, Chadstone Shopping Centre. I had to buy some teething powder for my daughter, and there's this one shop that's got this natural, it's called Pure Baby. It's got these natural whatever's. So I go anyway. We had it before. It works quite well. Kat's mama got it for us, and we'd run out. And I went in there and I just I bought my teething powder, and I have my T-shirt. I've got a Steel Wars one, the Yavin T-shirt. It just says Yavin. It's supposed to look like a college T-shirt kind of thing. And the lady behind the counter goes, "Oh, what's Yavin?" And I said, "Oh, it's and that's that thing where you're like, oh god, I've got to explain my Star Wars thing." I said, "Oh, it's a planet in Star Wars. It's a play. Like it's supposed to look like a university shirt, like a Yale or a Harvard kind of thing." And she goes, "Oh yeah, I got Disney Plus. I've been watching The Mandalorian." She goes, "I've been watching that. Yeah, she goes, The Mandalorian." I said, "Oh yeah," and I said, "Oh yeah, Baby Yoda." She's like, "Oh, I love Baby Yoda." And then she started sort of talking about babies, like, "Oh my god, he was so cute," and baby, it's crossed over in a big bad way. Like I can't think of anything Star Wars. I mean, have the movies even crossed over like this? Really? Like she did say that she'd seen, like she said after that she said that she saw, because I saw the new movie. Yeah, like my husband took me to see the new movie. But then she was just back on Baby Yoda.
Yeah. I think the obsession with Baby Yoda by everybody is unprecedented, because you see clips of, late night talk show hosts talking Baby Yoda. Laura Dern's on was it Stephen Colbert talking Baby Yoda.
There's murals. People may put murals on the wall. Like no one's put a Ray mural on the wall in Melbourne. Everyone loves Ray, but within 2 days, somebody had graffitied and people like yourself and people we know would go there to get a photo with it.
So I uploaded those photos to various social media, and people were like, well, where was it? Where's that? So I could direct them.
Yeah.
Precisely where. So it's really has taken the world by storm.
Yeah, it's come out of nowhere, and I don't. At the same time, I don't think it's overshadowed how good the show is as well. Like I think the show is really, really good. It's stood on its own 2 feet, and obviously Baby Yoda is a big part of that. But at the same time, it had a great start, some really good, strong early episodes. Hit a little bit of a lull, but probably not even fair to say it was a lull. Things sort of slowed down and then just picked back up and just rocketed and absolutely, nailed the finale. The last couple of episodes particularly were really good, but the finale was great. Taika Waititi, give that man whatever he wants to do, but give him a Star Wars would be great. Obviously, and now we'll touch on it when we get to the prediction show, but Rebecca Chow hitting it out of the park with her episodes as well gets us all excited. I'm not.
Yeah, with the Mandalorian, I know I was sort of surprised that the episodes were around that 30-minute mark. The last 2 were closer to 40 minutes, but what was good about that was that I could rewatch all the episodes quite easily then going into the finale, because they were only 30 minutes each, so rewatching them was easy. And
it doesn't feel it's that funny thing, because I think that was the real shock when the first one came out. Because a lot of times first episodes of series and stuff can sometimes be an hour and a half. Like we were going to start watching that Dracula show the other day and went, oh, it's an hour and a half. Oh, it's too late. We'll watch it later. And then it ended up being 40 minutes or 38 minutes or whatever, and I went, oh, that, what's going on here? Like they put this and they're making them short, but at the same time it's like, well, if it does what it's got to do and it serves its purpose, then great.
Yeah.
If it started to drag, it would be sort of at its detriment, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely all well paced. I think it's just I'm used to that sort of hour-long drama type of thing.
Yep.
But definitely, I think well before we were saying how happy we were that they were dropping it week to week, and I think at the end of it, I can look back and go, oh yeah, that was the absolute correct thing to do. That it really increased everyone's enjoyment and participation by having it week to week, everyone watching the same thing.
It worked. I've heard some people kind of say, I might have been on Blue Harbour or something, they're kind of going, oh, it kind of makes Netflix rethink what it's doing. But Netflix has got so much stuff that it can afford to sort of just drop things, and this was the one thing that was on there. Obviously you could go back and watch the movies and watch other things, but really, this was the thing. So it made total sense for them to drop it every week to keep the subscriptions going for one. Everyone's focused on this one thing. Maybe down the line, if they start producing huge things of content, it will be different. They start dropping these things, but I feel like these absolute tent poles, your Marvels stuff, and it comes, and when we get to Obi-Wan and Cassian and stuff, it'll be a similar thing. I think that they'll, whether it has the same effect, and we'll see when we get to the prediction show. We'll have to see. But
I've definitely enjoyed the model of week to week. Everyone being on the same page, and everyone talking about it for weeks and weeks. Because you think with the Netflix model, you talk about it for a weekend, 4 days.
Yep.
And then it sort of drops away.
Well, it's worked out great for us, as I touched on this last week with Jess, was that we were getting it at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. It was just
it was perfect.
It was the perfect television. Poor old Hawes and King Tom getting up at 3 a.m. to watch it. And as soon as, you just finish your dinner and put the tally on a Friday night, because, in my case, you're not going anywhere anyway. And, there's a brand new Mandalorian. And that also, I think that helped, at least in our case, like getting my partner Kat into it, because it was sort of like, yep, that's like the night viewing, and obviously Baby Yoda as well. So she was invested on Baby Yoda. Now, before we flick the switch over to That Geek Pod, there's one more Star Wars thing that we've got to touch on that we haven't touched on.
Just one small thing.
One small thing: The Rise of Skywalker. Now in cinemas, still playing currently. I've done 4 viewings. We touched at the start. You've done the 3. We have touched on the movie as well. But does it feel like, I don't know, does it feel like it's time to exhale? Now it's sort of, it's done. It's done. Does it feel like, I don't know. Does it feel like the end?
No. But it's left me with questions. I want to see more of what is Rey going to do next. How do they pick up the pieces? Is Ben really dead? Or can he? Would they bring him back? And
what do you think? Like, I don't know. This is also. This probably gets into the speculation stuff rather a little bit, but like, I know that all the actors and stuff were sort of just like, yeah, we're done. And when you get to the end of a trilogy of films, and there's a lot of pressure being in these films as well, and there's a lot of spotlight, and you just want to step away and be done with it for a while and things like that. But do you think they're just going to hold their powder and kind of go, well, we're not going to touch this period, what happens after, until we, really see whether we can get some of these people back or what we do, or I just don't think they're done with them. I just feel like that's, like you said, like obviously Rey, and it's just so open-ended for her. Like she's literally like Rey is literally Luke at A New Hope. She's literally standing on those suns. Like it's sort of different. Like, Luke doesn't really, he's looking for adventure and wondering what to do and what's going to happen, but she's fulfilled a destiny, but she's got her whole life ahead of her, really, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I really think that, yes, the actors are all a bit burnt out at the moment, and you can't blame them. It's an intense few years being a part of it all. So I think give them a few years break, let them step back from being full royals for a while, and but then in a few years they might want to step back into it. If offered good roles.
Good roles. Like good something, good roles, good
Yeah.
Disney's pockets are deep. I guess it's the, once they commit, you know what I mean? Like it's that thing where it's like, well, if you don't get Daisy Ridley, and she's just like, you know what, I'm done. I never want to touch Star Wars again. And it's not fair. Everyone kind of goes to Daisy Ridley saying that she's done, but who knows, or whatever. So let's just say in theory that Daisy Ridley and Oscar Isaac is like, oh no, I'm finished with it. But John Boyega was like, you know what, I would like to come back to Finn. The problem is that if you tell the Finn story, you've still got to tell the Daisy and Poe story in some respect. So whether it's like the Joey spin-off from Friends where Finn goes and moves to somewhere else and has his own adventures. But if it is that, then it's still got to be acknowledged about, like, you've still got to go, well, Rey's, running a Jedi Academy, somewhere, or doing this, or you've still got to give the state of the galaxy. So as soon as you commit to one thing, it does mean you've got to basically work out what's happening with everybody. And that's the same thing as, like Force Awakens was like, hey, we wiped all that old canon, but it's, now that we drop this movie, we have to establish to some point where the state of the galaxy is and where some people are to a degree. So I think it'll be a while before they do that, because they're just like, hey, look, if we need to make that commitment on a story, ideally, and we have to commit to what all these characters are, we want to see what we can do with it. If it's a new saga, if it's the Rey saga or the whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to do. I don't know when we'll see it. I mean, who knows? It could be 10 years. It could be. We'll get into speculation about what's. Yeah. We'll get into what's coming next year and coming in the future and stuff. But
yeah. I think with Rise of Skywalker, I mean, there's parts I like, and as people who've listened to this podcast will know, I was quite attached to the character of Ben. But I've come to realise that I was quite moderate on the scale of Reylo.
Completely.
I was a centralist.
I was very like, I know, like when we walked out of the cinema and you had a moment, when Ben died and stuff, and I was like, oh wow, like I know you're a crier, you get invested. My partner Kat, she cried through the last 30 minutes of Rise of Skywalker as well. But I think it's an Adam Driver thing more than a Ben Stiller thing. But anyway, whatever. He's not that handsome. And I was like, oh wow, that really got to Catherine. It really, But like you said, that's. Like, oh yeah, Catherine likes Ben Stiller, but it's another level, isn't it? And the finality of it is I think also a thing that's feeding the discourse, because there is no way back. That's it. That's the story. Like you have all this speculation and wishes and dreams and hopes, and everybody invests what they want into these characters and stuff. And when it doesn't pan out the way it is, and I know that we've got people who are close to us and friends of ours who have feelings, positive and negative, about the film. And some who are, really disappointed with it, and it does affect your enjoyment of it, I think, a little bit as well.
Yeah, those sort of out of movie decisions that were made, like the sidelining of Rose.
Yep.
In that third watch is when I twigged of, I couldn't give her. To give her a whole lot more story, you'd have to rewrite other bits. But it's like, well, as soon as you realise the bits with her and Leia weren't working or something, you could slightly rewrite the scene where they're delivering the information before the run to Exegol. All you had to do, so it was mainly Finn and Poe delivering that information, and the two of them were standing. Rose was sitting and said a couple of lines.
Yeah.
All you had to do, make her stand so that she has an air of authority, and give her a couple more of those lines. It's not great, but it's a little bit more, and it's showing her position within the Resistance.
Oh, for sure. Like Poe promotes, Finn, just goes, you're a general now. You could have just gone to Rose and said, like, I spoke to Jess, and I put this online, that they could have just pivoted that and said, they made a research Star Destroyers. You could have had a line where Poe comes up to Rose and is just like, hey, we need you, like, we've got to hit these Star Destroyers. We need someone up there to coordinate the attack, General. And she's just like, well, I've never, space battle isn't my thing. He's like, don't worry, you can do this. She's like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what ship should I go on? And he turns around and he's like, well, General Leia's ship is right there. We'll put you on there, Gold.
Yeah.
It's up to you, Gold Leader. And then she's there. She coordinates the attack. She's you can just put a couple of shots of her inside that Tantive 4. I mean, they didn't blow it up. Don't blow it up. But and then she would have, and they could have easily have just taken. I know she was boots on the ground in that run, but she's sort of in the background, just going, "Where are you going? Come back!" They could have easily have just painted her out or put Connix in the front and center and done that. It would have been pretty. I mean, I'd understand. Movie making is hard. Don't get me wrong, and they were up against it the whole time. but at the same time, if they ever do the Josh cut, I'll go back. No one's asking me, but anyway.
No, But what's frustrating, and I think that's why I was a bit distracted during my third viewing, was I thought, well, that's actually a really easy fix that they could have picked up in pickups or little reshoots.
Yep.
Once they realise it's not writing her into the rest of the story. It's just a couple of little things. I mean, we still probably would have been saying, well, there's not enough Rose, but if she had at least been given that role of authority within the Resistance, it would make then more sense that, okay, she's staying at Resistance Base to coordinate everything while they're going on their Goonies adventure.
There's a nice moment that I only realised on the fourth viewing at the end when they're celebrating and Chewie gives her a really big hug and lifts her up. That was actually a very nice moment, actually. So, again, Rose now is in the same position as the other characters that I know someone's saying, like, give me a Rose, Disney Plus show. But again, as soon as you establish anything after that timeline, you've got to work out what's happening, whether they're already thinking about that. But I don't think that area is going to be touched with for a moment. So
no, I think they'll take a few years before they think about that type of thing again. And if they do a trilogy or a series of movies, they'll probably be more likely to have a person to sort of oversee the three or whatever.
Yeah, I think that'll be, I mean, we'll touch on that when we get to predictions, but I think that will be the biggest change I think that they will end up doing, is saying we have to get one creative vision on these things. And, they already said that they had Rian Johnson was going to make a bunch of films. So they've already thought about it, I think. I think they've already realised that. And again, it's that real life thing of like, hey, we bought Star Wars, we got to get a movie out. We got to get someone to do this. And a lot of people were like, well, this is too big, I wanted to do it. And, they got J.J. Abrams, and they had another guy who was supposed to write it, and that didn't work. And they had, again, he's kind of come in and saved the day a couple of times. So it's hard to, whatever issues people have, the real world consequences of making a movie and the pressure and stuff is hard. It's, when it's all summed up, it's amazing that they're as good as they are, really.
I think the jumping from place to place, I sort of feel the need to explain things to people, like why they have to do this, why they have to do that, blah 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 blah, because you don't get that on your first viewing. No, not at all. It took me the second I was listening very intently and getting the hang of it, and then by the time I got to the third, like I said, I just sort of enjoyed the ride, because I was like, oh, I get it. We're going here, we're doing this, we're doing this. Well, what we're going to speak positively for a moment,
please. While we wrap this up, give us a positive note to go out on before we jump over to Geek Pod, Catherine.
That obviously, yes, I'm a big fan of Ben, but the Rey and Kylo / Ben stuff throughout all three of those movies was so good and just so meaningful. And in Rise of Skywalker again, those scenes between the two of them were amazing. Just amazing.
And the acting throughout is the best acting in Star Wars. I mean, it doesn't hurt when you've got Adam Driver, who is one of the best actors in the world, who's way too good to be in Star Wars. He was absolutely elevating. But all the acting is, because Star Wars used to be the butt of the joke with acting and stuff, even though I think the original trilogy acting is pretty good. Lots to love. All right, so what we're going to do here is that we're going to finish this off now. And we're going to jump over. If you want to listen to the continuation of this conversation, Catherine's going to take the reins on Geek Pod, and we're going to start talking about speculating and talking about what's coming up next year. Or this year, sorry. This year. So I'll just do a quick look. If you want to, catch StarWarsSpelledOut.com, listen to That Geek Pod, T-shirts at TeePublic, all that stuff. And thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Josh.
And we'll see you over at That Geek Pod. Bye.
Bye.